Hello? I hope all is progressing well. Welcome to I Don't Know, We Can Talk About It, where we discuss myriads of topics civilly, reasonably, and responsibly. My name is Kevin Dufresne. Our first topic is about digital literacy. AI, a conversation that industrially is relevant and popularly, as well as historically present. Considering assisting individuals with being more aware of technology in connection with an educational atmosphere is sound. I feel as though considering technology and educational atmosphere may be using, learning how to use such technologies will prove beneficial, particularly in connection with the particular educational atmosphere, though in a different sense of experience. One may, for example, assess how a particular system, Blackboard, for example, may be experientially relevant as a content management system. So one may be able to leverage experience from an educational atmosphere in a different light that may prove connecting and valuable in connection with a similar technology elsewhere. Otherwise, I find being able to engage with technology of different parameters, though in connection with an educational environment, may vary depending on use, which the article assesses. How might an educational atmosphere make technology useful, even if not popularly familiar as educational technology? When considering the conversation, the context of the article, I think about how when a technology in one educational atmosphere is in use, then in another educational atmosphere, which one may enter after graduating or even perhaps after transferring over, how the technology may be similar, though different, requiring different educational learning parameters. And I find the technology being always in progress does not necessarily take away from anyone's learning, especially considering growing from educational reality in general, which technology is more so newer and being put into adaptable form from reality, which already is in progress, making innovation, inventing to assess what may work in progressing reality. So I don't ever want to overweigh technology, though being a parent, technology is here. So if efficient, if functional for learning, then I find technology may be sound. What comes about in the article to consider greatly concerns content. with so many different mediums, one may find different ways to relate, not only to the context of content, though the context of the medium, which does play a factor in connection with spatial development, with how one's brain is forming, how one's brain is progressing. Reading on a cell phone is going to have different outcomes, different results, different processing than if one is reading a physical book. So when assessing technology, balancing what is necessary is sound when one is navigating toward one's goal. Contextually, assessing how individuals may learn through meaningful progress, through meaningful avenues which incite learning, which are of sound structures in connection with good learning, well-rounding progressions, then technology of its varying forms and meanings proves differently, especially depending on the individual using technology. If technology is useful, good. Considering how biologically, neurologically, one progresses with technology is very important because one's brain, one's neurological progressions will differ depending on resources one uses, which is quite important to understand when considering our next topic. Language. Gen Z, Gen Alpha, I think we're all human beings. I think the terminology may be helpful to categorize different periods, years of happenings, though human beings are human beings. When language comes into play, I consider how the article brings about a language that Gen Z, Gen Alpha put to use if aware and subscribing to such language. I find the idea of language, brain rot, as one may consider in connection with the article, to be interesting from an English academic-wise perspective. From such a perspective, all forms of these languages, these progressions of languages, are of a class of utterances. So, not so new, not so shocking, though contextually requires more gravity. What is requiring more gravity is what brain rot connects to. Even in a world of brain rot, as an umbrella term, with simply language and types of behavior, the context of these things are what needs attention. Understanding for example, a terminology is fine. Adding the context, the meaning of the terminology in connection with the behavior, in connection with what directions one may flow to with such behavior is really important. I'm quite aware of how individuals may progress when using such language. A random outburst is quite a different expression if the overall context is not fair to what the language requires. For example, if an individual is speaking, a public speaker is speaking at an event, and an individual screams out loud of a protest, then one may say the individual is protesting. Finding the context of what the individual is protesting about comes from the language the protester uses. People are more easily able to identify what relevance the protester is addressing, if relevant at all. Then individuals may proceed to define, to decide. In a situation where an individual may be speaking or performing at an event, then an individual screams, "Skibbity toilet." If people subscribe to the language, people might laugh. If the context is relevant, if simply somewhat like an outburst, one might simply think, okay, that's just random, which the article is assessing. Does that type of language make individuals more communal? Is what I inquire of the article. I find understanding language, choosing to understand allows one to be more understanding. That's very true. If a protester protests at an event, one may do some research and assess whether what the protester is protesting for is something that resonates with an individual. If an individual screams out a random portion of a language, one might wonder, okay, is this worth looking up if it's not so relevant, so popular to one's awareness in an immediate sense? Of course, the context will be varying depending on audience. So I don't find any surprise in these utterances. From an academic perspective, I don't find any surprise at new language forming. What I do find important is how the connecting of the language is to context and what individuals will do with that forming context from there on. The article mentions individuals are capable of doing other things even if using such language. Very, very true. Again, language is always forming, and the reality is people speak in different dialects. That's already a sign that individuals are in connection with language in a communal sense, and that progress of language is always happening, is always relevant. Though, contextually, what drives one to engage with particular vocabulary words, to drive away from those vocabulary words, is not only of the use of the words, though of the expression. What is the relevance of the expression of the terminology? And there's a time and a place for communicating in a particular way. I find certain terminology seems more easily implementable, whether one considers the language of slang or not. The terminology that one finds easily implementable is usually in relation to what one may easily understand. If an individual, for example, says, "Ooh, that car is fresh," understanding a basic concept of fresh may allow one to understand how many differentiations of meaning that make sense are grounding with the car being fresh. It can be a new car, it can have a fresh new painted coat. Fresh has many meanings that one can easily identify with. Now, if one comes about screaming skibbity toilet, the terminology is not so clear. Literally, one might think that the terminology has to do with a toilet. Is it a brand of a toilet? I have no idea, though I understand the terminology may deal with a lot. Similar to a word like Riz. The terminology may deal with a lot that might be very abstract. And again, skibbity toilet and Riz are completely two different realms, even though one may consider the language of Gen A, Gen Z, the context varies so much that Riz, for example, may be a word that is more implementable in everyday conversation, arguably, very arguably, though skibbity toilet might find a lot of challenges to seamlessly weave into everyday conversation. Again, with awareness as well, other terminology might relate so much to other things that might make the terminology, the vocabulary, challenging to seamlessly weave into language. For example, if one is in college, especially at a college with fraternities and sororities, then one is screaming Sigma all day, individuals might be thinking, is that person a part of a fraternity or a sorority? If an individual's in an environment where people subscribe to different languages and someone screams Sigma, someone might think, hey, is that a part of the Greek language, Sigma? So we have a lot of different ways to assess how we connect language and why some words become more relevant and seamlessly, seemingly, weave into the natural fabric of conversation is usually because of a base understanding. Hard to argue for a word like hi. A natural greeting that can literally translate across near every country very easily. Hi. Who's to argue that hi is a slang version of hello or greetings or what's up? There are certain instances of language where the context is so relevant, so easily comprehensible, that finding community through such language is quite easy, where everyone is understanding and choosing to understand each other in a friendly manner. Hello, how are you? Hi, what's up? Whereas particular language may be very challenging to really assess. And I find, in terms of connecting communally, the grounding points of language not only are for one-way direction. The communication may be more than one way. So Gen Z, Gen Alpha, people may recognize the language you're using, may even find interesting ways to connect through the particular language. And the same goes for Gen Z and Gen A, assessing the reality of the language developing. Familiarly might be real fun, might be super new, though connecting with language, understanding will allow Gen A, Gen Z, anyone that's really progressing with language to understand the reality of language progress so far, already considers that language may grow, already considers that new language will come about. Again, I'm explaining from an English academic perspective. The idea falls under this idea of utterances. And so long as individuals are choosing to be better communicators, then the forming of language will not be extremely challenging. Though, what I do think is real important to embrace is the reality that, aside from slang language, consider dialects. Consider actually learning a language from another country so you can find more enjoyment of community, true community, in a broader perspective. And that's not just for Gen A or Gen Z, that's for anyone assessing language. If you're looking at language from one part of New Jersey to another part, it'll be different in terms of dialect. That's real. If looking at a countrywide, dialect is going to differ. That's real. Why does dialect differ? A lot of cultural reasons. An individual may literally be from another country and speak a dialect of a particular place in another country because of how one subscribes to culture. So language is a beautiful realm to explore. And I think the conversation is really cool because we, as a human society at large, the interdependent reality at large, may really grow together through language. And I really find learning another language of another country really can bring people together in a wonderful way. And of course, through understanding. There are many different intelligences, and one may better engage with intelligences through better understanding language, through better understanding expression and how individuals may communicate language. So context is a part of understanding how to connect through the meaning and the expressions, and just respecting language formation. Language progress really allows one to assess how to approach language and how to respect language progress differently. All right. Next, we are in the origami time. We're going to just start off real nice here into our point to point. Now, we don't have to do a 4-point, but we can just go right into it. So no need to go down, and then down, and have our cross in the middle. We can just bring our square piece down into a triangle form. Next, to make this origami dog, we're just gonna bring one side down to bring our ears, and then you can bring the other side down to bring your other ears. Doesn't have to be perfect. As you can see, it looks like a little Galaga airship. We are making our ears though for our dog. Next, we're gonna just fold up right here in the middle. Just fold it up, and just like this. Very simple, very easy. Fold up both flaps to the front. Now what we're gonna do though is we're gonna actually fold the other flap down a little bit. So as you can see, there's a little bit of a flap that comes from that pull down, and it's really nice there. Now what we're gonna do is we're just gonna take the flap here, and what we're gonna do is a double fold, okay? So we'll take this fold here, we're gonna bring it behind this, you see that chin right there? We bring it behind it. The next thing we're gonna do is we're just gonna bring this down just a little bit so that we can get our tongue here, okay? Just a little bit. Then we're gonna bring it back up to give it a little bit more of a round shape. So you'll see that you can fold this in many ways. Depending how you want it, if you want to make your tongue a little longer, by all means go ahead. Okay, so this one is looking pretty good. Look, see, like My dog has a little bit of a tongue poking out, like a little pear, like a little pear. All right. So the next thing though is we're gonna actually turn this back. We're gonna fold in just the last page here. So we're gonna fold it in, give it a little triangle. Okay. So you just fold it in there. Pretty good. Fold it in there. We're folding in the back portion here. You can give it just a little fold. There's like some little slips in the back right here. Some little slips. You see that? Little slips. And afterward, you have your origami dog head shape. Now, what you can do is you can grab a pen or marker, however, and decorate this face. So you can have the nose here, of course your mouth area is here, some eyes, however you want to decorate your dog. So you can also pull in different folds. If you want, you can just get this nice little 3D effect here. So what you can do is you can bend first if you want, and then you can just kind of give it some space here, like this. See that? So as you can see, one ear is popping out, and this just gives your origami fold some of your own little pizzazz, if you will. Okay? So then you can have a nice little 3D dog ears forming here. And yeah, so it's pretty cool. And the amount of folds is about 8. Our next topic is about a physical book. Reading a physical book has so many health benefits, and the book we're going to be talking about is Finding the Mother Tree. Wow. Let me tell you, what a read. When I read the book, I actually feel like I'm finding so much terminology that grounds in reality that feels so freeing. The book reads somewhat like a memoir while exploring forestry, while exploring mycelium, while exploring the conversations that nature may be having, how nature may connect. We're looking at particular trees here. The reality is the approach of the author really brings to light how forestry may differ, or how preservation of lands may be, where forests are experiencing losses of trees due to people coming in, whether through government or illegally, and taking trees, harming the forest. How one may approach carefully tending land to ensure further growth in the future, healthier growth in the future. Going through actual experiences, experiments of the author allows for insightful groundings of qualitative and quantitative research, which brings one to become far more aware of what might be happening in a forest nearby. I think the research, the text, brings so much relevant data to consider, especially because if one does care about forestry, one may really become more insightful of what may prove more valuable long term, not only for forests, though for forests in connection with entities that find forests appealing, valuable for whatever reason. I think the text is very, very much worth reading, and again, I feel the text to be quite freeing in bringing about such an awareness of the natural world that humans are able to experience to a degree. Thanks for joining. I don't know. We can talk about it. Onward and Upward, Dufresne.